Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we are doing another Manga review. Now today we are going to be reviewing Space Battleship Yamato, which is right there. Now this is the Leiji Matsumoto version, which is the original version that was adapted from the anime that came out in 1970s, I think 1975, which was at least animated by Leiji Matsumoto, if not actually co-written with him. I can't actually remember the proper source for it, but I know that he was at least the animator and he was the creator of the manga. Now, this is published by Seven Seas in these lovely classic collections, which is basically a hardcover version of a very old manga that is seminal in some way. Like the one that they released this month was the Sentai Go Ranger one, which is like the seminal text for Tokusatsu, which is the beginning of Power Rangers and Kamen Rider and all of this other stuff like that. They also have a Cutie Honey and Devilman, and I think that's it. They also have Kamen Rider coming out later this year, so that's pretty cool. And the demographic here is shonen. This did run on a shonen magazine, and it ran during the same time period that the anime was coming out, but it started serializing 1 month after the anime started to release on television. So I guess this is kind of like a marketing tool that they used in order to sell the anime, because as far as I'm aware, the anime usually makes more money than the manga, at least in this time period. But I'm not exactly sure, so fact check me if you want. Let me know down in the comments if that's true or not. I don't know how it is nowadays, but that's how I understand it worked back in these times, in the 1970s. Now, the genres here are military sci-fi and space opera, and this is kind of like the big seminal text for space opera in Japan. Most of the stuff that we see now that is space opera from Japan is heavily inspired by this. And in fact, some people would argue that even Star Wars was inspired by this, because this did come out 2 years before Star Wars, and a lot of controversy came about when Star Wars featured a lot of elements that are very similar to stuff that's here. But the problem with that is that Star Wars borrowed from a lot of older space opera type of stuff from the very beginning. So it's not really exactly, like, in my opinion, it doesn't make too much sense to kind of compare it to Leiji Matsumoto's Space Battleship Yamato, when it could have just been a case of like concurrently reaching the same kind of idea, which we see a lot of times in a lot of different ways across novels and manga in the West and in Japan. So I don't know, I don't really care about starting that discussion, but I thought it was interesting that these two are kind of like the revival, like this and Star Wars are kind of like the revival of space opera in the 70s, which is really awesome. Now, like I said earlier, this is an adaptation of the anime, or, well, it's not really an adaptation, it's kind of like, I don't know how to call it. It's like divergent from the anime, but not exactly, but it's made by the same person, so like, are both of them canon? It's a very complex kind of web of stuff, but the anime came first and this was second, only by a month. So yeah, take that how you will. Now the premise here is basically that this ship, the Space Battleship Yamato, is the greatest ship ever created by humanity, and now carries Earth's best and brightest as their last hope, as they set out to go beyond the edge of the Milky Way galaxy in order to gain this magical technology that's going to help us revitalize Earth from these crazy magical aliens called the Iskandarians. Iskanders? I don't know what they're called. But they're from this planet called Iskandar. So there you go. And yeah, it's pretty cool. The setup here is actually kind of odd, because there's like the first volume like deals with the completed story element, like a story plot line of like Earth creating a spaceship and then traveling and then finding the spaceship, or finding the MacGuffin that they needed to find, and then coming back and defeating the aliens that were ravaging Earth. However, the second and third volume follow a story that starts 2 years later, that is essentially like the whole idea that once the main character and the crew that he is with return to the world of normal people, they are no longer comfortable in it because they no longer fit in. And so they go on their next adventure to keep the normal people from, turning into people like them in order to protect them and stuff like that. And it's kind of interesting, but I really disliked that the second story didn't finish. It was left off halfway. And I really hate that, but I understand that most of these manga and anime from these time periods and from older kind of ideas really are not supposed to finish. They're supposed to just kind of like make you interested in this stuff so that you can watch the anime and watch the movies and stuff like that. So I understand the point of it, but I really dislike it because it's like, dude, just give me the full story. I just hate it when they leave stories halfway done. And especially like in this case, because the story was like almost about to finish. Like there was only a little bit more that had to be explained and done before they could have like wrapped up the story properly, but they decided to like cut it where they did, and it just like bothers me. But you know, whatever. Now I also do want to talk about the rating for this story before we actually get into the review. I'm rating this a 3 out of 5, and I want to make it clear that it's not because I didn't like this story, but it's because this is an old story and kind of like the story that inspired all the other stories that come after it in the same genre. So it's tough because everything that I read here is no longer new and interesting. It's played out and old by this time, right? By the time of me. And I've already seen so many different military sci-fi space operas that this one just feels like it's not that important or not that special. But it's like the original text that made this genre what it is in manga and anime and in Japan. So it's still valuable, even if it doesn't read like an amazing text, if that makes sense. So although this is a 3.5 or a 3 out of 5, I think that this is a manga that everyone should own if they like this genre, right? So there you go. Now let's actually get into the plotline and like the rest of the review, and then I'll talk about the rating again later. So the plotline here is good, it's solid, and it's generally easy to understand, but it has some flaws that I would kind of say it has to do with the time period it was written and the way it was written in. And to explain what I mean is, this was made originally to be an anime, and then it was an anime that got cut short twice, from 52 to 39, and then to 26 episodes. So it was cut in half, basically. Not only that, but like a lot of the people that worked on this were not very good storytellers or very new to storytelling at the time. So there's a lot of situations and ideas here that kind of like don't lead anywhere, or that stop before they make sense to stop and stuff like that. So there's a lot of kind of like issues with the writing that are very minimal and kind of contrivance based, but that, you know, you notice if you're looking for these kind of things. So in general, like, this is a good story and it's well written, but it has elements there that could have been even better if, you know, they were cleaned up and kind of edited a lot more. But as far as I understand it, the way that this was developed, that wasn't really a possibility, so it's understandable. It's very similar to how George Lucas had to like retcon a bunch of stuff from the original trilogy in the prequel trilogy to kind of make everything make sense, right? It's understandable, and it makes you know, and it's not too bad, but it kind of like bothers you because like, this could have been done way better, right? But whatever. Most of the chapters also seem to lack flow between each other. Like, everything is connected. Every chapter leads into the next in like a plotline sense, but the way the transition between each chapter happens doesn't always feel that great. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully you guys kind of got what I meant. The other thing I wanted to notice is that the kind of plot points that come up sometimes feel like they should have been resolved already, but then continue to not be resolved. And again, this is just a situation with the fact that this is, like, as far as I know, one of his earliest works, and one of the kind of situations where it was like stuff that was out of the curator's control affected his writing ability. And I mean, overall, it's good. It's enjoyable. It's better than middle of the road, but it's not anywhere near like amazing or awesome. It's just kind of like good and enjoyable. So there you go. Now the characters here, they're not bad and they're not super interesting, but they all kind of stand for very kind of good themes and ideas that we still see today. And in fact, I would say that some of them are pretty dang iconic, since I've read recent manga that have characters that even look like these. I think they're just generally iconic. Like Captain Juzo Okita, which is the old captain, the strong and dependable, kind of like Captain Nemo type of guy from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Right? I think Captain Nemo's from that. He captained the Nautilus, which is like the submarine in that book. I think that's what it was. And he has that whole kind of like robust kind of like old man face, and the kind of like crushed by the duties that he has, but still managing to stand up straight and kind of like continue to do his job even though it like kills him to do it. Very, very good. I really enjoy his character and the effect that the character had on every other character and how tied into the space battleship Yamato he was. It was very cool. I really enjoyed him, and I like him a lot because he seems to be a character that inspires a lot of other characters. Because even in Eden Zero, Mashima's latest work, we see a character that looks almost exactly like this Juzo Okita character from this series, which is really cool. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was interesting because we see that this series has impacted so many different mangaka and so many different animators across the generations. It's so cool. And then we have Kodai, which is the young, brash, hotshot kind of guy that doesn't really follow directions, but has their heart in the right place. And so when he doesn't follow directions, but does things right, he doesn't get, chastised, but like everyone knows that they should be angry with him, even if he did the right thing, right? And I really like him as a character as well. And I really enjoy when he steps up to be the captain in the second and third volume, because it provides us with this whole kind of like young man trying to fit into his new role kind of thing that, I think a lot of us young people can identify with. So that was cool as well. We had a few other characters there. Like we had Yuki, who is like the main female character, which would be very similar to kind of like the woman that's always with Spock. Ohara, I think is her name. I can't remember. She's like the communications officer, or like Princess Leia and stuff like that. So very interesting, very cool. Really enjoy it. And then we have a few other characters. Like we have Analyzer, which is a robot comic relief, very similar to R2-D2 and C-3PO. And then we have Deslar, which is the bad guy for the sake of being a bad guy. But he's actually kind of interesting because the way or the reason why he's a bad guy is in order to save his people, but in order to save his people, he has to commit mass genocide for other people. So he's not right to do that, but we can understand why he would think that that's the right thing to do. And in fact, he's a very good counter to Captain Okita and kind of everyone on the space battleship, because like they're both doing the thing that they have to do to save their people. It's just like it puts them at odds. So who is right and who is wrong? It's a very cool kind of like gray area type of thing that I really enjoy. However, his story kind of ends really quickly. So there could have been a lot more work there. But in general, I enjoyed him as a character as well. And there's a bunch of other side characters. And in fact, the most interesting side character is probably Jura, which has her own short story at the end of the volume. That was really interesting. I liked it because it tied in with a lot of other characters from early on in the book. And that kind of adds a lot of context to the story, and I really enjoy that. Next, world building. It's good, it's clear, and it's concise. Actually, this is probably my favorite part of the story because we get everything very clearly right off the bat. Earth has space travel capacities, but they're limited. Earth is devastated. Everyone lives underground because we have had a decades-long war with these aliens called the Gamillions, who are trying to take over Earth. Then humanity gets a call from beyond the cosmos, right? From away, far, far away. And we get the ability to try one last time to save our planet. And then They build the space battleship Yamato, the greatest battleship in existence, the epitome of human ingenuity and power and engineering. And they lead off into space, into finding the cure to this planet's disease, right? And it's super great. I really enjoyed it because everything was really well explained. It was all very clear and very enjoyable. And then we see what happens when we clear the world, when we clean it, and where people finally are at peace once again, only 2 years after the end of the first volume. And we see how mankind has gone back to being the way they were before, and we have problems, and now there's a new threat coming. And, you know, the space battleship Yamato has to go deep into space once again. The world building here was phenomenal. It was really, really well done. I really enjoyed it. I could have liked a lot more of the alien races and developing them, but the focus of the story is on Earth and the battleship. So I understand why that didn't happen, and I understand that it's all based on humanity managing to accomplish its goals. So I don't really fault it for not focusing on the aliens, because they really just were an obstacle to overcome in order to, you know, kind of make the journey feel worth it. So yeah, very cool. This is really good if you enjoy having a basic understanding of the conflict and the kind of like ideas that humans are running with in terms of like how like the science fiction technology works. But it's not very good if you're someone that really loves lore and wants all of the deep and kind of like messy details about how everything works, right? So, you know, it kind of depends on your preferences. I like the messy details quite a bit, but in science fiction, usually the messy details are math and science. And as much as I enjoy that, since I am studying engineering, I also don't really care that much about how it works, because the point of these stories for me is not, oh, what type of fake technology can I, you know, learn about to recreate later. It's more about, I just want to enjoy stuff, right? So there you go. It's pretty cool. And I actually really did like the few explanations we got about the technology, because they were really great. Like the best one was the wave motion engine, which is kind of like this wave motion engine, which is like a thing that's going to create waves up and down, right? Kind of like sines and cosines. And, you know, it's going to do that in such a way that it bends space and time, so that a circle now turns into, like, the arc of a circle turns into a straight line, right? And that's essentially how, like, modern ideas on faster than light travel kind of work. Like Alcubierre's drive is kind of like similar to that. And instead of doing that, what it does would be kind of like scrunch up space and time in such a way that you're kind of cresting over a wave of gravity and kind of going along that wave faster than you would if it was flat and you go across it, right? Which is really interesting. I quite like that a lot. And it's very reminiscent of hyperspace. So there you go. Really cool stuff. I really did enjoy that. Just in general, it's very fun. Now let's talk about the art here, because this is kind of like good and bad at the same time. The mechanical design of the ships and the way that all the backgrounds are made, the space backgrounds and the backgrounds that are featuring a lot of machinery, are top tier, beautiful, very freaking amazing. I love them so much. It's so cool. However, the characters look like ass, man. Like, the characters just look really horrible. They're like vaguely humanoid. Like, they look really lumpy and really odd. And I really don't enjoy it. But everything else about the art here is just so amazing that I really don't care that the characters don't look that good. And even if they don't look that good, the art style is still really iconic. So I really can't fault it that much. But the characters could have used a lot of work. And I think that the version that what's called Dark Horse released has new updated art by a different mangaka. So if you're like really not able to enjoy stories with really bad art, maybe check those out instead of this original version. But there you go. But yeah, the ships and the technology are badass. They look so cool. I really do enjoy that. And now fan service, really, there's none. So don't worry, this is not fan servicey at all. This is very much focused on the action and the struggles of humanity more than it is about like fan service and, you know, the main character kind of like doing his thing with a fancy girl, right? So there you go. Now, rating, let's come back to it. This is a 3 out of 5. It's solid and enjoyable, but it's not amazing. And what's really not amazing here, more than anything, is the plot line, especially because I hate that the second story that we were told never got finished. Or I think it might have finished and they might have made like a movie adaptation or something, but I hate that the manga doesn't cover the ending. It's so annoying because it ends like halfway through the story, and I hate that so much because it's like, why am I buying this? Why am I consuming this if you're not going to tell me the finished story? But, you know, that's like a me problem. That's not really a Seven Seas problem either. It's more like the original manga industry or manga magazine that never finished a story. The real issue here is that I mentioned it already, so, you know, you can skip this part if you don't want to watch it again. But since this is a classic, since this is the seminal text of, you know, space opera manga, it feels very redundant and very kind of like similar to other things that I've read. It feels very similar to a lot of Western space fantasy and space operas that I've read, you know, in the last 10 years. So my, you know, love for it and my enjoyment of this story is maybe marred by that fact. The fact that I'm familiar with the genre from the get-go and have enjoyed other versions of it that are much newer, much better, you know, better written or better idea, like thought of before they create them. And so nothing here feels original or amazing. It all feels boring and cliche. Yet it's enjoyable, and it's still a very important historic text for the genre and for manga that I really can't say that you shouldn't buy it. I definitely recommend this title. I think everyone that enjoys this genre or anyone that wants to get into this genre should read this book because it's very, you know, enjoyable. It's very clear. It tells you all of the stuff that you need to know about what space opera is and how it works and what it deals with, right? But there's a lot of different manga and a lot of different Western movies and stories and novels that are very similar to this that you can find elsewhere. So there you go. Now, similar titles. Now, the most similar in terms of like effect that it's had would be Star Wars. Star Wars and this are essentially concurrent examples of like seminal things in the genre, right? So if you like Star Wars, you should read this. And if you like this, you should read Star Wars or watch Star Wars or whatever. Now, there's a few other things that I think are pretty similar, like Odyssey 1, which is a self-published series by Evan Curry, who kind of created this series called Odyssey 1. The first book is Into the Black, which kind of deals with humanity finally achieving faster than light travel using this thing called tachyons, which are these, imaginary particles that kind of exist but don't exist because we haven't proved it, that kind of like don't enjoy existing, so they like travel distances very quickly. And it's a very interesting concept, but basically it deals with Eric Weston, the captain of the ship, that kind of like takes the ship onto its first voyage into the dark, deep space and ends up stumbling across a war with aliens that is a mess, right? And it ends up being a very cool story that I think is very similar to this in premise, although it evolves into its own kind of thing, very similar to Halo, which is it's very awesome. I really enjoyed that series, and I think that if you like Leiji Matsumoto's Space Battleship Yamato, you'll probably enjoy Odyssey 1. And if you enjoy Odyssey 1, for some reason, if you are like one of the many people that read it but don't really ever talk about it, you'll probably enjoy this as well. So there you go. That's all I have for you guys today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. What are other space opera manga that you guys know about that I should check out? Space opera is one of my favorite genres, and especially when it's mixed with military sci-fi. So I'm always looking for new things in the genre. So let me know down below, and let me know down below as well. Do you guys think that it's fair to rate classic things at low ratings, right? I would say so because it being classic doesn't denote it being better than other things. It just means that it's like the thing that most things now are based on. So like, I think it's bound to have low ratings regardless, especially because it is kind of a classic thing, right? So, but let me know your thoughts on that down below. I would really appreciate some kind of perspectives outside of my own. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.